Did you know that food prices just hit their highest point in over 2 decades? And supply chain analysts are warning that September could bring the most severe shortages we've seen since the pandemic. Listen carefully because what I'm about to reveal isn't speculation. It's happening right now. The USDA quietly released data showing that 73% of American families are already cutting back on groceries due to rising costs. And trust me, this is just the beginning. Today, I'm exposing 10 critical grocery items you absolutely must stockpile this August before they either vanish from shelves or become so expensive that average families simply can't afford them. And honestly, number 8 will shock you. It's already disappearing from major chains, and most people have zero idea what's coming. Before we dive deep, hit that like button if you want to stay ahead of these shortages, and subscribe because I'll be monitoring every development as this crisis unfolds. Drop a comment telling me which shortage has hit your area hardest. I'm personally tracking everything from wheat supplies to transportation costs. Let's jump straight into the items that could protect your family from food insecurity and save you thousands of dollars when everyone else is panicking. Item 1. Wheat flour and baking essentials. You probably walk past the baking aisle thinking flour is flour, right? Just grab whatever's cheapest and move on. Well, here's the reality check that's going to change everything. Wheat production globally just suffered its worst season in 15 years. We're talking about devastating crop failures across multiple continents simultaneously. Russia and Ukraine, which together supply nearly 30% of the world's wheat exports, are still dealing with massive disruptions. But here's what mainstream media isn't telling you. Even countries that weren't directly affected are now hoarding their wheat supplies. Canada just implemented export restrictions on premium wheat grades. Australia is prioritizing domestic markets over international sales. This isn't coincidence. This is coordinated protectionism. Let me paint you a picture that'll keep you up at night. I visited 3 different grocery stores last weekend, and what I saw was alarming. The flour section at my local Kroger looked like a tornado hit it. Shelves were maybe 40% stocked, and the manager told me something that made my blood run cold. He whispered that corporate headquarters warned them to expect even more limited shipments through the fall. King Arthur flour, which was $4.25 per bag in January, is now $7.89. That's an 85% increase in 8 months. But price isn't even the scariest part. Availability is becoming the real crisis. Here's a story that'll shock you. My neighbor Jennifer runs a small bakery downtown. She's been in business for 12 years and never worried about basic ingredients. Last month, her distributor called and said they could only fulfill 60% of her flour order. 60%. She had to scramble, calling 6 different suppliers just to keep her doors open. One supplier told her that premium bread flour might not be available at all by October. Think about that. We're talking about one of the most basic ingredients in human civilization potentially becoming scarce. Now, here's the strategic opportunity most people are missing. Flour, when stored properly, can last 5 to 8 years. I'm not talking about that flimsy paper bag you buy at the store. I mean real storage using airtight containers with oxygen absorbers. This isn't just buying groceries. This is securing your family's access to homemade bread, pancakes, cookies, and pizza for years to come, while everyone else is paying premium prices or going without. But flour is just the beginning. Sugar prices are absolutely exploding right now. The latest commodity reports show sugar futures up 67% since spring. Why? Extreme weather devastated sugarcane crops in Brazil and Thailand. El Nino patterns created the worst growing conditions in decades. Plus, energy costs for processing and refining have skyrocketed. That 5-pound bag of sugar you grabbed for $3.50 last year? It's now $6.25, and experts are predicting it could hit $9 by winter. Here's what really opened my eyes about the sugar crisis. I was talking to Maria, who manages purchasing for a regional restaurant chain. She showed me invoices that made me dizzy. Their sugar costs have tripled since January. Tripled. They're now paying more for basic white sugar than they used to pay for premium vanilla extract. She told me they're considering removing certain desserts from their menu because the ingredient costs are unsustainable. And baking powder, something so basic you probably never think about it, is facing its own supply crunch. Most commercial baking powder comes from just a handful of manufacturers, and aluminum shortages are hitting production hard. I've already seen several specialty baking stores completely sold out of certain brands. Here's my storage strategy that could save your family hundreds of dollars. Buy flour in smaller quantities but more frequently. That sounds counterintuitive, but here's the science. Once you open a large bag of flour, the entire contents get exposed to air and moisture every time you use it. Smaller bags mean you're keeping unopened supplies perfectly preserved while using what you need. I buy 5-pound bags, store unopened ones in my basement pantry, and transfer opened flour to airtight glass containers with bay leaves to prevent pests. Item 2. Rice and alternative grains. Now let's talk about something that's quietly becoming a crisis while everyone's focused on other shortages. Rice and alternative grains are sitting in the middle of a perfect storm that most Americans don't even see coming. India, the world's largest rice exporter, just extended their ban on certain rice exports through the end of 2025. This isn't temporary. This is strategic food nationalism, and it's spreading to other countries fast. But here's where it gets really interesting. The rice shortage isn't just about supply, it's about quality and variety. Basmati rice, jasmine rice, arborio rice for risotto. These specialty varieties are becoming luxury items overnight. I was at Whole Foods yesterday and a 2-pound bag of organic jasmine rice was $18. That same rice was 6 months ago. Vietnam, Thailand, and Pakistan are all following India's lead, prioritizing domestic food security over export profits. What does this mean for American families? It means the days of cheap, abundant rice are ending. We're entering an era where rice becomes a premium commodity, and most people have no idea it's happening. Here's a real-world example that'll blow your mind. My friend David owns an Asian restaurant in downtown Chicago. He's been serving authentic dishes for 15 years, and rice is obviously central to his menu. Last month, his supplier called with devastating news. They could no longer guarantee consistent access to the jasmine rice his customers expect. He had to choose between raising menu prices by 40% or switching to lower quality alternatives that would compromise his food's authenticity. Alternative grains like quinoa, barley, and bulgur wheat are facing similar pressures. South American quinoa exports are down 25% due to climate issues. Barley production in Europe suffered from excessive rainfall followed by drought. These aren't just statistics. These are the building blocks of food security disappearing while most people focus on more obvious shortages. The storage opportunity here is massive. White rice, when stored properly in airtight containers with oxygen absorbers, can last 30 years. 30 years. You're not just buying food. You're investing in decades of meal security. Brown rice has a shorter storage life due to its natural oils, but it offers superior nutrition and still lasts 2 to 3 years when stored correctly. Here's my strategic approach that's already saving me serious money. I'm diversifying my grain storage across multiple types. White rice for long-term security, jasmine rice for flavor, quinoa for nutrition, and barley for versatility. Each grain offers different cooking applications and nutritional profiles, so I'm not dependent on any single source. Storage technique that could preserve your investment for decades. Use food-grade buckets with gamma seal lids for bulk storage. Add oxygen absorbers and desiccant packets to prevent moisture and pest issues. Label everything with purchase dates and rotate stock regularly. Keep storage areas cool and dark, ideally between 50 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Item 3. Canned protein and meat alternatives. Here's something that's going to absolutely shock you about protein sources, and I guarantee most people are completely blind to what's happening right now. The canned protein market is experiencing what industry insiders are calling a supply apocalypse. And I'm not being dramatic here. These are the exact words used by a major food distributor I spoke with last week. Let me break down the crisis that's unfolding. Aluminum shortages have gotten so severe that major manufacturers are cutting canned meat production by up to 45%. Think about that for a second. Nearly half of normal production capacity is gone. But it gets worse. The livestock industry is simultaneously dealing with feed cost increases of over 60% since last year. Corn and soy prices have exploded, making it incredibly expensive to raise cattle, pigs, and chickens for processing. Here's a story that'll make your jaw drop. I was talking to Rebecca, who manages procurement for a regional grocery chain. She showed me their ordering system, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. They're receiving maybe 30% of their requested canned beef, chicken, and tuna orders. 30%. She told me that major brands like Hormel and Bumblebee are basically rationing products to retailers. But here's where most people are making a critical mistake. They're only thinking about traditional canned meats. The real opportunity and the real crisis is in plant-based protein alternatives. Canned beans, lentil products, and protein-rich vegetables are facing their own perfect storm. Argentina and Brazil, major exporters of legumes, are prioritizing domestic markets due to their own food security concerns. Chickpea imports are down 35% from normal levels. I discovered something fascinating while researching this crisis. Canned salmon and sardines are becoming the new gold standard for affordable protein. Wild-caught salmon actually have prices stabilized because fishing quotas were set years in advance. Meanwhile, farm-raised alternatives are getting hammered by feed costs and disease outbreaks. A can of quality salmon that cost $4.50 last year is still around $5.25 today. Compare that to canned chicken, which has jumped from $2.75 to $5.89 per can. Here's the strategic play that could save your family hundreds of dollars on protein. Focus on shelf-stable options that offer multiple preparation methods. Canned salmon works for sandwiches, pasta dishes, salads, and casseroles. Canned beans can become soups, sides, salads, or even burger alternatives. You're not just storing food, you're storing versatility. Storage wisdom I learned from a military surplus expert. Rotate your stock religiously using the first-in, first-out method. Write purchase dates on can tops with permanent marker. Store in cool, dry locations away from direct sunlight. Properly stored canned proteins maintain peak quality for 3 to 5 years but remain safe to eat much longer. Item 4. Cooking oils and fats. Alright, here's where things get absolutely insane, and I mean that literally. The cooking oil crisis is so severe that it's already reshaping how restaurants and food manufacturers operate across the entire country. Most people have no clue what's coming because they're focused on obvious shortages while this crisis builds silently in the background. Let me hit you with some numbers that'll make you panic buy oils immediately. Soybean oil prices are up 78% since January. Canola oil has increased 83%. Sunflower oil, if you can even find it, is up over 120%. These aren't gradual increases. These are economic shockwaves hitting every single food production facility in America. Ukraine and Russia normally supply about 60% of the world's sunflower oil. That supply line has been completely destroyed. Argentina's soybean harvest failed catastrophically due to drought conditions. Canada's canola crop suffered from extreme weather swings that decimated yields. We're looking at simultaneous supply failures across every major oil-producing region on Earth. But here's what really opened my eyes to how serious this crisis has become. I was talking to Tony, who owns 3 pizza restaurants in suburban Detroit. He told me something that made me immediately go home and check my own oil supplies. His food costs have increased so dramatically that he's had to completely redesign his menu. Dishes that require significant oil for preparation are being eliminated because the ingredient costs are unsustainable. Tony showed me invoices that looked like Monopoly money. The same case of canola oil he bought for $47 in December now costs $124. He's paying more for cooking oil than he used to pay for premium cheese. Think about the ripple effect. Every restaurant, every food manufacturer, every bakery is facing these same impossible cost increases. Here's something most people don't understand about oil storage. Different oils serve different purposes and have dramatically different shelf lives. Coconut oil can last 3 to 5 years and works for both cooking and non-food applications during emergencies. Avocado oil has the highest smoke point, making it perfect for high-heat cooking, and it lasts 18 to 20 months when stored properly. Olive oil presents an interesting opportunity. The refined versions last significantly longer than extra virgin varieties and cost substantially less. You're getting similar nutritional benefits with better storage characteristics and lower upfront costs. Meanwhile, specialty oils like sesame and peanut oil are becoming impossible to find at reasonable prices. Storage strategy that could preserve your investment for years. Keep oils in cool, dark locations away from heat sources. Never store them above your stove or near appliances that generate warmth. Transfer to smaller bottles in large containers to minimize air exposure. Glass containers work better than plastic for long-term storage because they're completely airtight. Item 5. Freeze-dried and dehydrated foods. Now we're getting into territory that most Americans never consider until it's too late. Freeze-dried and dehydrated foods are experiencing demand that's completely overwhelming production capacity. And here's the kicker. Once these supplies are gone, they're not coming back quickly because the production process is incredibly complex and time-consuming. Let me explain why this category is so critical right now. Freeze-drying removes 98% of moisture from food while preserving nearly all nutritional content. The result is food that can last 25 to 30 years when stored correctly. We're talking about decades of food security in lightweight, compact packages. But manufacturing capacity for freeze-dried foods is extremely limited because the equipment is expensive and the process takes days per batch. Mountain House, one of the major freeze-dried food manufacturers, is already showing delivery delays of 6 to 8 months on new orders. 6 to 8 months. That's not a supply chain hiccup. That's a complete breakdown of normal commerce. I talked to a camping supply store owner who told me that customers are buying entire cases of freeze-dried meals, not just individual packages for weekend trips. The dehydrated food market is facing similar pressures, but for different reasons. Energy costs for dehydration facilities have skyrocketed. Natural gas and electricity prices are making it incredibly expensive to run the large-scale dehydrators that process fruits, vegetables, and meats. Some facilities are actually shutting down temporarily because operating costs exceed potential profits. Here's a real-world example that shows how serious this is getting. My cousin Sarah, who's big into emergency preparedness, tried to order a year's supply of freeze-dried meals for her family of 4. The first 3 companies she contacted had waiting lists over 6 months long. The 4th company had inventory but was charging prices that were double what she paid just 18 months ago. But here's the strategic opportunity that smart families are already capitalizing on. Dehydrated foods offer incredible value when you focus on the right categories. Dehydrated fruits provide essential vitamins and natural sugars. Dehydrated vegetables retain most of their nutritional content while weighing a fraction of their original weight. Properly stored dehydrated foods last 8 to 12 years, giving you nearly a decade of nutritional insurance. Storage technique that maximizes your investment. Keep dehydrated foods in original packaging until ready to use. Transfer opened packages to airtight containers with oxygen absorbers. Store in locations with stable temperatures between 50 and 70 degrees. Avoid areas with temperature fluctuations like garages or attics. The beauty of this category is versatility. Dehydrated vegetables can be added directly to soups and stews. Freeze-dried fruits work for snacks, baking, or breakfast additions. You're not just storing emergency food, you're storing ingredients that enhance regular meals while providing long-term security. Item 6. Specialty spices and seasonings. Here's something that's flying completely under the radar while everyone focuses on basic staples. The spice trade is experiencing what industry experts are calling a complete market disruption, and most families have absolutely no idea how this is going to impact their daily lives. We're talking about ingredients that transform basic rice and beans into meals your family actually wants to eat. Madagascar, which supplies 80% of the world's vanilla, just got hammered by cyclones that destroyed entire vanilla orchards. These plants take 3 to 4 years to mature and produce pods. That means vanilla prices, which have already tripled, won't stabilize until at least 2028. Real vanilla extract that cost $12 per bottle last year is now $34, and that's if you can find it at all. But vanilla is just the tip of the iceberg. Black pepper, often called black gold in commodity markets, is facing massive supply shortages from Vietnam and India. Climate disasters have devastated pepper plantations, and export restrictions are choking off what little supply remains. I was at a specialty spice shop last week, and the owner told me something that made my jaw drop. He's paying more wholesale for black peppercorns than he used to pay for saffron. Here's a story that'll shock you about how serious this crisis has become. My friend Carlos, who runs an authentic Mexican restaurant, showed me his latest spice invoices. Cumin prices have increased 340% since spring. Paprika is up 280%. Chili powder has nearly quadrupled in cost. He's had to raise menu prices so dramatically that regular customers are complaining, but his ingredient costs are completely out of control. Saffron, already the world's most expensive spice, has become nearly impossible to source at any price. Kashmir, which produces the highest quality saffron, had its worst harvest in recorded history due to unprecedented weather patterns. Spanish saffron production dropped 60% because of extreme drought conditions. We're looking at global saffron supplies that are maybe 30% of normal levels, but here's where smart families are finding incredible opportunities. Many spices, when stored properly, actually improve with age while maintaining their potency for decades. Whole spices like peppercorns, cinnamon sticks, and cardamom pods can last 15 to 20 years in airtight containers. You're not just buying seasonings, you're investing in a flavor that becomes more valuable every month. Ground spices have shorter storage lives, typically 2 to 3 years, but they're still worth stockpiling because replacement costs are skyrocketing so fast. I've started buying whole spices and grinding them myself using a dedicated coffee grinder. The flavor is dramatically better, and I'm locking in today's prices for decades of use. Storage strategy that preserves potency and saves money. Keep spices in airtight glass jars away from light and heat. Whole spices last much longer than ground versions. Label everything with purchase dates and test potency annually by smelling and tasting small amounts. Store in cool, dark pantries rather than cabinets near stoves where heat degrades quality. Item 7. Infant formula and baby food. Now we're entering territory that's absolutely critical for families with young children, and honestly, this might be the most important section of this entire video. The baby formula shortage crisis that hit in 2022 never fully resolved, and we're heading into another potential shortage that could be even more severe. Here's what most parents don't realize about formula manufacturing. Only 4 companies control 90% of the U.S. baby formula market. When one facility has problems, it creates nationwide shortages almost immediately. Abbott Nutrition, which makes Similac, just announced production delays at their main Michigan facility due to equipment upgrades and regulatory compliance issues. This single announcement has already caused panic buying in major metropolitan areas. European formula imports, which helped during the last shortage, are facing their own supply chain disruptions. Energy costs for manufacturing in Europe have increased so dramatically that some facilities are reducing production schedules. Transportation costs for importing formula have doubled due to fuel prices and shipping delays. But here's something that'll terrify any parent. I was talking to Michelle, who manages the baby section at a large Target store. She told me they're already implementing purchasing limits on certain formula brands because demand is outpacing supply. Parents are buying cases instead of single containers, creating artificial scarcity that's making the real shortage even worse. Baby food faces similar pressures, but for different reasons. Glass jar shortages are limiting production capacity for traditional baby food brands. Organic ingredients are becoming incredibly expensive as organic farming costs skyrocket. Some premium baby food brands are quietly reformulating recipes because certain organic ingredients are simply unavailable at commercial scales. Here's the storage reality that every parent needs to understand. Unopened baby formula typically has shelf lives of 12 to 18 months. That might not sound like much, but when you're facing potential shortages lasting months, having even a few extra containers could mean the difference between feeding your baby properly or scrambling to find alternatives during a crisis. Powdered formula stores better and longer than liquid concentrates. The cans are more compact, easier to stack, and less likely to be damaged during storage. I recommend gradually building a 3 to 6 month supply by buying one extra container each shopping trip rather than panic buying large quantities at once. Storage technique for maximum safety and longevity. Keep formula in original containers until ready to use. Store in cool, dry locations with stable temperatures. Check expiration dates regularly and rotate stock to use the oldest containers first. Never store opened formula beyond manufacturer recommendations because nutritional content and safety can be compromised. Item 8. Medications and health supplies. Here's the category that's disappearing from shelves faster than anything else, and most people have absolutely no idea it's happening because pharmacies and medical suppliers are keeping quiet about the severity of shortages they're facing. We're talking about basic over-the-counter medications that families depend on for everyday health issues. Generic medication manufacturing is concentrated in just a few countries, primarily India and China. Recent disruptions in these supply chains have created shortages of common medications like acetaminophen, ibuprofen, and allergy medicines. What used to be readily available at every pharmacy is now subject to allocation limits and unpredictable availability. I was talking to Janet, who's a pharmacist at a regional chain, and what she told me was absolutely alarming. They're getting maybe 60% of their normal shipments of basic pain relievers and cold medications. Some generic brands are completely unavailable, forcing customers to buy name brand alternatives at 2 to 3 times the cost. But prescription medications are facing even more severe shortages. Manufacturing facilities for generic drugs operate on extremely thin profit margins, and when raw material costs increase or supply chains are disrupted, they simply stop production rather than operate at losses. This creates cascading shortages across multiple medication categories. First aid supplies are experiencing similar disruptions. Bandages, antiseptics, and wound care products rely on global supply chains that are increasingly unreliable. Basic items like hydrogen peroxide and rubbing alcohol, which were impossible to find during the early pandemic, are showing signs of supply stress again. Here's my strategic approach that's already proving valuable. I'm gradually building a 6-month supply of over-the-counter medications that my family uses regularly. Pain relievers, allergy medications, digestive aids, and cold remedies. These items have long shelf lives, typically 2 to 4 years, and their value is increasing faster than inflation. Storage guidelines that maintain medication effectiveness. Keep medications in original containers with intact labels. Store in cool, dry locations away from bathrooms where humidity can degrade active ingredients. Check expiration dates regularly and rotate stock to use oldest items first. Never store medications in vehicles or areas with temperature extremes. The reality is that medication shortages can create genuine health emergencies for families. Having a reasonable supply of basic over-the-counter medications isn't hoarding. It's responsible health management during uncertain times. Item 9. Water filtration and purification supplies. Now let's talk about something that most Americans take completely for granted, but could become the most critical shortage of all. Clean drinking water and the supplies needed to purify questionable water sources. Municipal water systems across the country are facing infrastructure failures, chemical contamination, and treatment capacity issues that are getting worse every month. Recent water crises in Jackson, Mississippi, Flint, Michigan, and dozens of smaller communities show how quickly safe drinking water can disappear. But what most people don't realize is that water filtration supplies are experiencing their own supply chain disruptions that could leave families without backup options when municipal systems fail. Replacement filters for popular brands like Brita and Pure are facing manufacturing delays and cost increases. The specialized materials needed for effective filtration, including activated carbon and ion exchange resins, come from limited global sources. When these raw materials become scarce or expensive, filter production slows dramatically. I discovered something shocking while researching this crisis. The lead times for quality water filtration systems have increased from 2 weeks to 3 months in many cases. Companies that manufacture gravity-fed filters, portable water purification tablets, and emergency water storage containers are completely backlogged with orders. Here's a real-world example that shows how serious this is becoming. My neighbor Tom, who's an emergency management coordinator for our county, tried to order water filtration supplies for disaster preparedness. The first 4 suppliers he contacted had waiting lists over 8 weeks long. When he finally found available inventory, prices had increased 60% from what he paid just last year. But here's the strategic opportunity that prepared families are capitalizing on. Water purification supplies have incredible shelf lives and provide genuine life-saving capabilities during emergencies. Water purification tablets can last 5 to 7 years when stored properly. Quality water filters can process thousands of gallons before needing replacement. Portable water filtration systems like LifeStraw or Sawyer products offer backup capabilities that could be essential during infrastructure failures. These devices enable water sources into safe drinking water for months or years of use. You're not just buying supplies, you're buying insurance against water emergencies that are becoming more common every year. Storage approach that maximizes your water security investment. Keep filtration supplies in original packaging until needed. Store water purification tablets in cool, dry locations away from light. Maintain backup power sources for electric filtration systems. Have multiple purification methods available because different situations require different solutions. The reality is that clean drinking water is the most fundamental requirement for human survival. Having multiple ways to ensure water safety isn't paranoid preparation. It's basic common sense in an era of increasing infrastructure failures and environmental contamination. Item 10. Batteries and power storage solutions. Here's the final category that's about to become absolutely critical. And I'm telling you right now, most families are completely unprepared for what's coming. We're not just talking about batteries for your TV remote. We're talking about power storage that could keep your family connected, safe, and functional when the electrical grid becomes unreliable. Lithium battery production is facing what industry insiders are calling a perfect storm crisis. China controls over 75% of global lithium processing, and recent export restrictions are choking off supplies to American manufacturers. Tesla and other electric vehicle companies are consuming massive quantities of available lithium, driving prices through the roof and creating shortages for smaller battery applications. But here's what's really shocking about this crisis. I was talking to Marcus, who manages electronics purchasing for a major retailer, and he told me something that made my blood run cold. Their alkaline battery orders are being filled at maybe 45% of requested quantities. 45%. And that's for basic AA and 10OA batteries that power everything from flashlights to emergency radios. The manufacturing facilities that produce these batteries are facing their own energy cost crisis. It takes enormous amounts of electricity to produce batteries, and when energy prices skyrocket, production becomes economically impossible. Some facilities are actually shutting down during peak energy cost periods, further reducing available supply. Here's a story that'll open your eyes to how serious this shortage has become. My friend Lisa, who runs an emergency preparedness business, tried to order a bulk shipment of various battery sizes for her customers. The first supplier had a 6-week waiting list. The second supplier could only fulfill 30% of her order. The third supplier had batteries available but was charging prices that were triple what she paid 6 months ago. Power banks and portable charging devices are experiencing similar supply disruptions. The semiconductor chips needed for these devices come from facilities that are operating at reduced capacity due to ongoing global chip shortages. When you combine chip shortages with battery material shortages, you get a category that's heading toward complete unavailability. But here's the strategic opportunity that smart families are already capitalizing on. Rechargeable battery systems offer incredible value because they can be used hundreds of times instead of single-use alkaline batteries. A quality set of rechargeable AAs with a solar charger could replace thousands of disposable batteries over their lifetime. Listen, everything I've just shared with you isn't fear-mongering, it's reality. These shortages are happening right now, and the families who take action in August will be the ones eating well while everyone else is scrambling. Start building your stockpile gradually, one shopping trip at a time. If this video opened your eyes to what's coming, smash that like button and hit subscribe, because I'll be tracking every development as this crisis unfolds. Drop a comment telling me which item you're prioritizing first. Stay prepared, stay smart, and remember, the best time to prepare was yesterday. The second best time is right now.